Good evening. The Toronto Raptors beat the Miami Heat 121 to 97. Lots of interesting storylines in this game. Grady Dick went off in the first half. Scottie just made a series of extremely high level of difficulty shots. A bunch of them were over Bam, and we have Eric Spoelstra, which is probably my favorite part of this game. It was at least three. It could have been more, but after three Gary Trent Jr. threes, storms the floor, just livid, just beside himself, shocked, because a bunch of these Gary threes were pretty open, and he was cooking tonight, and it just didn't feel like the Heat were respecting his shot enough, and just in general, this was a really odd game. The Raptors go up 78-36. Let me just make sure I got 78-43, sorry. 78-43 at the half, and then they score 16 points in the third quarter, and I couldn't stop thinking about how Grady and Boucher were combined plus 42 in 7 minutes. They both played 7 minutes, plus 42 in the first half. They didn't see the floor, I think, until the very end of the third with Boucher and then Grady in the fourth. And when they came in, they weren't really riding that hot streak anymore. And so for that whole time that the Heat were really cooking in that third quarter, they went on a pretty big run. I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't find it. But they went on something like a 20-4 run or something, and Darko had to call a few timeouts. But I was kind of wondering, it felt like the Raptors were going to let it slip away at the end of the third. Miami was really pushing. And I think going into the fourth, Scottie only had 10 points, and he ended up with 20 and really took over at the end. He also had 8 assists, and so many of the shots that he was making were just like the nice side of Joel Embiid's game, falling away touch type shots. And it was without him and his push, and I think with Gary's really time, a bunch of Gary's threes were really timely too. It kind of, I think, added to Spoelstra's frustration because the Heat were just cutting the Raptors like crazy on offense in the third and mostly the third quarter. Whereas the Raptors defense was really good in the first half. But it felt like whenever the Heat would go on any kind of run whatsoever, it would be met with a Gary Trent Jr. three. He was 8 for 9 from three tonight, 10 for 13 from the field. Pretty wild. There's some pretty wild stuff in the box score. Also on the game, Dennis Schroeder plus 31 in 27 minutes, only 9 points. But yeah, I thought he brought a steadying presence to the game and seemed to be on the floor at all the right times. But yeah, this was the Raptors went 4 for 32 from three against the Celtics. And in this game, they were something like 14 for 22 at the half. They ended up going 20 for 38, 53% from three. The Heat go 6 for 28, 21% from three. So just a kind of bizarre game. Scottie 1 for 6 from three, Porter 2 for 4, Gary 8 for 9, Barrett 1 for 3, quickly 3 for 6. And then Grady 2 for 2, Schroeder 3 for 5, Temple, McDaniels, blah, 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 Boucher 0 for 1. You had Thad, 28 minutes in this game. He kind of had a bit of there's some rough sequences with him. I think obviously the size discrepancy, and then Porter, the one knock on him pretty obviously is the foul trouble. He picks fouls up really quickly, and he only ended up with 3 fouls in this game in 18 minutes. And I don't really understand why Darko went away from him so much, especially in that third quarter when the Raptors were really struggling. I really didn't get Darko's third quarter rotations and strategy. Called a bunch of timeouts, didn't really change the lineup around that much, and it really felt like the Heat were we're gonna make like a big push, and a huge part of that was Butler was really good in that quarter. Hero was really good in that quarter. I mean, Hero ends up with 16. Butler ends up with 16. No one on the Heat scored more than 16. So, really rough night from the Heat. You got Hero. You know, he turned it on there in the third quarter, but he still goes 7 for 20. Butler 6 for 11. Like nobody on the Heat. I mean, Duncan Robinson 14 points off the bench. Like he was definitely had a bit of an impact, but it's a pretty rough watch from the Heat, especially in that first half. It was a combination of the Raptors just making a ridiculous amount of threes. Obviously, a lot of clips going around about the ball movement was pretty trippy to watch. Speaking of trippy, I'm in the Dalmatian Islands tonight. I don't know why that. I guess that's not that trippy. Somewhere, I think it's in Croatia or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was a wild game from the Heat, and Eric Spoelstra was my favorite. Yeah, that was my favorite side story. Again, like just you can, like I said this before, but you can tell how mad a coach is by how far they walk onto the court when they call the timeout. And it felt like after every Gary 3, it was just Spoelstra like running out to the half line, just incensed, like enraged. Super frustrated, and then he was super frustrated with Scottie just hitting all these like meme type shots. Like he just couldn't really believe it. I ended up watching Spoelstra, I think, more than I usually watch coaches, because he's a fun watch. He gets really into it. Obviously, like an incredible coach too, but he's obviously seen a lot in his day. I don't know how many 6 for 28 games he's seen. That's a 21% clip from 3. It's going to be difficult to win games like that. I mean, it is funny. The Raptors go 61% from the free throw line tonight. Ben Taylor, not a huge factor in this game. I thought that maybe he would make an appearance in the fourth quarter, give the Heat like 46 free throws or something, but he ended up kind of being a bit of a non-factor in this game, which is good to see. But yeah, so the Raptors started out the game 10-0, which is like, okay, doesn't happen that often in the NBA. Like 10-0 is kind of a wild score. Had Alvin had some gems tonight. I love how he just put out there that at one point he didn't know how to pronounce Siakam and Van Vliet, which are pretty like, it's not Sandro Mamushkailishvili. Like it's pretty like Siakam Van, like I don't know how you can't pronounce Van Vliet. I mean, you hear some people say Van Fleet, like there's an F there, but yeah, kind of a funny moment from Alvin. He also had one where he said, "No Pascal, but you still want to get the ball up the floor quick." Okay, great. Speaking of quickly, I've seen this a few times from Quickly where he starts out really aggressive and like really effective, and he had a game like that tonight in the first quarter. He was a big reason why they started off kind of crazy. He hit 2 threes in a row. And was just diming people up left, right, and center. We saw him do that a few games ago early in the game. He seems to kind of rack up a lot of his assist and points earlier. I'm not saying that's a great trend, but I have noticed that. Like tonight he had 9 assists. He almost had a triple-double tonight. 9 assists, 8 rebounds, 17 points. But he, other than the garbage time players, was the only minus on the team tonight. I just felt like he was a little bit ineffective later on. Like he was only 6 for 16 from the field. But yeah, he came out really early, and he was, I think, a big reason why the Raptors kind of had that really kind of crazy start that obviously wasn't, I don't know, obviously, but wasn't sustainable the whole game. Porter picks up 2 really quick fouls. He gets taken out pretty early in the game, and the Raptors scored more threes in the first 5 minutes than they did against the Celtics, and I thought Lowry was sagging off a bunch on 3, maybe giving the Raptors some gifts out of niceness. And Grady comes in, 11:32 the second quarter, or no, the first quarter. Sorry, Grady comes in sometime in the first quarter, and he gets an assist on his first touch. First time he touches the ball, he gets an assist. Then he hits a 3. Really nice sidestep 3. Then he gets a steal, does a spin, gets another assist, and then he hits another 3. Again, in the first half. The first half, he was plus 21 in 7 minutes. The best basketball I've seen him play. I don't really know what you could even ask for him to do. And Darko still neglects to put him back in all the way until the fourth quarter, at a time when the game was kind of in this like weird spot where the Raptors stopped hitting threes. And I just really didn't understand that. Like, if you're going to develop, and the kid ended up with 11 minutes, but his plus minus dropped to plus 14. But after the first half, he was plus 21, 4 assists, 2 for 2 from 3. If they're in kind of more development mode now, especially after the Siakam trade, I don't know what he possibly could have done more to like get more minutes. I thought it was borderline criminal to take him out of the game like that and then not put him back in, especially when you're like trying to get him. I know you got him on the Dolph Lundgren like workout program or something. You want to get him absolutely fucking yoked. But I think when he's cooking like that, especially from 3, which is the skill you really brought him in for, that really blew my mind. That completely blew my mind that he didn't get back into the game until the fourth quarter. After, again, just insane sequences from him, like stealing the ball, spinning around, getting assists, quick decisions, threes just absolutely swishing in. So yeah, I mean, if the Raptors would have lost this game, you definitely would go back to the third quarter where they scored 16 points and again had Porter, Boucher, and Dick on the bench the entire sequence when the Heat were making the comeback. And I'm kind of watching this almost like, when you're in a nightmare and you can't run or something and someone's, Gus Fring is chasing you or something. Had some the ball movement like really slowed down too in the third quarter, like the second half of the third quarter. There was just a lot of ISO, a lot of just not a ton of ball movement. And then it was RJ Barrett who got 3 straight attempts he drew free throws for at a time when the Raptors offense was just like really in the mud and just not really working. So he stayed really aggressive. He had a great game. He had like 20 something, put up a 26 burger, plus 20 in 36 minutes. Also picked up 8 rebounds, 9 for 14. So efficient night. Got 13 free throws too. Only went 7 for 13 though, so it's a bit rough. But I thought that really kind of slowed the game down. The Heat had all the momentum, and then when you get free throws on three straight possessions, I thought that was a really important like juncture in the game. And then Gary just again with the timely threes, again 8 for 9 from 3 tonight, and so many of them were just daggers that absolutely just destroyed Aaron Spoelstra and the complete psyche of the Miami Heat team. He got inserted in the starting lineup post Siakam trade. So, I mean, I think after tonight, you're probably going to keep that same starting lineup intact with Porter and Gary in there. I mean, it looked, especially the way it came out, it looked really hot. Start of the third, not so much. Darko called a timeout at 10:29 in the third quarter, and then substituted in Thad for Jonte Porter. And then another timeout, not that soon after, and I think he put Schroeder back in. Again, Schroeder plus 31 tonight, and only 9 points, so it's not like he got that all from points. I think he was out there with a lot more of the more kind of stable offensive lineup. So I thought he had a good game. But yeah, Raptors 16 points in the third after getting 78 in the first half is it's just kind of wild. And then the story in the fourth, obviously Gary kept hitting threes in the fourth, but it was really Scottie that took over in this one. There's a few maybe potential Raptor moments episodes. There was a non-rebound of Boucher 9:56 in the fourth quarter that if they would have lost this game, I probably would have been thinking about, because it was just pretty wild. But yeah, Spo with the series of angry timeouts. And then Scottie just hitting super contested fadeaway. I mean, they're technically jumpers, but I think on 2 of them, especially one against Bam, it was almost in like rubbing up against push shot territory. I think one of them was with one hand. but it like the sexy part of Joel Embiid's game, which I know is a pretty small part of it, but it looked kind of like that. And these were shots. The three ball wasn't going for him tonight, but those mid-range fadeaway shots off balance with 2 seconds left on the shot clock just broke the Miami Heat, broke Eric Spoelstra. He was, again, not happy. I mean, anytime if you're a competitive coach, if your team is down 78-43 at the half, it's kind of difficult to be in a good mood. But I really did enjoy Eric Spoelstra just storming the floor after every Gary Trent Jr. three. Just like I don't know. I love that stuff. Like you see him on the sideline, like you see him, he's like super pensive. He kind of gets into that like not fight or flight, but it looks like that from TV, where he's just kind of like frozen, and then it goes in, and then he just like barrels onto the court. And I love coaches that do that. I love coaches that just bomb into the court. And again, the further they go in, the more angry they are. And I'm pretty sure I counted 3 of them for Gary. Dennis might have gotten 1 too, I think, but I'm pretty sure Gary had triggered 3 angry Spoelstra timeouts, because Gary 8 for 9 from 3. I'm gonna say like 4 of them were open. 4 makes were open, maybe even 5. Like a few of them were pretty open. And a big reason, like Gary really benefited from the ball movement, and even on a few of them, I thought that Gary still made the next pass on a few of those sequences where there was really sexy ball movement. I mean, he didn't get an assist in the game, but that's kind of normal. But I mean, 28 points from him in 31 minutes, 10 for 13 from the field. It was a really, really just like a huge game. A huge game for him, and, not people, with his contract situation, it's not quite sure what the future is. I've always been a little bit higher on him. I know I'm saying this after a good Gary game, but I've always been a little bit higher on him. To be honest, I'm making a Pascal Siakam Raptor Moment supercut. Like, started it this afternoon, and it's only 31 minutes long. And like the Precious one was 33 minutes. OG was 35 minutes. I just thought the Pascal one would be like 40. I'm pretty sure I can promise. I'm going to promise. If I'm wrong on this, I will walk through the town square naked or something. But the Gary one will be over 40 minutes. Like, I've just made a lot more Gary content than probably in relation to other players. And I've just always valued the spacing he creates, the shot, and even when it's like, not working, when it's not sexy, it's kind of like, players that are that archetype, they're going to go through periods like that. And I think over the last couple of months, he's shooting something like 46% from 3. So, I've kind of always been, I think, a little bit higher than the general consensus, and just enjoyability. He does some pretty wild shit in transition. That kind of the video going around of the guy jumping into the judge kind of sideways, that was going around a little while, like last week. It does remind me of Gary in transition sometimes. The floater game is wanting, and at the rim a lot of time is wanting. But I just think that his 3-point shooting is so valuable, and he seems to get. The thing I like about Gary is his misses. It's not like his misses correlate with like choking in big moments or something. Like, he'll just go 0 for 8 against, like, I don't know, like the Wizards or something on like a Wednesday in December. It's not like he's missing a bunch of shots in the clutch. Like, he seems like the type of guy who, like in tonight's game, you see him, hitting these really important momentum shifting shots. He's not at all like deterred by the moment, to the point of where it's almost like sociopathic, like, which is good. Like, it's like him in interviews where it's just like the same answer every time. It's just like, I mean, like if I was an NBA player, I would either do that, or I would just like randomly quote Lord of the Rings for like 10 years straight or something like that. I think it's a good strategy. Why give the media anything to work with? What they're gonna fucking do. How was the pregame show? I did watch. Did I watch the pre? I think I did watch the pregame show. Oh yeah, we have in the pregame show. Yeah, I wasn't sure how I felt about the trade until Sherman Hamilton said, Bruce Brown wears his hard hat to every game. So it's great. Love that. Anybody else? Watch the pregame show? Fill me in. I'm sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't. But yeah, tell me what you guys think about this game, and I will read some of the chats in a sec. Really quiet game from Lowry. 4 points in 29 minutes, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. So, and on defense, I would say like the 1-3 that Scottie did hit, Lowry was like 80 feet away from him. And I think on a couple of the Gary ones, Lowry maybe didn't do the best closeout job. I think Haywood Highsmith on a couple of them, and Duncan Robinson definitely on a couple of them. But yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a generational Kyle Lowry game, and I really didn't think nobody on the Heat tonight really felt all that threatening, except for Butler and Hero for a brief time in the third there. But again, nobody on the Heat scored more than 16 in this game. So, I mean, it's nice to have balance. It's nice to have a balanced offense. But when you don't hit 100 points and nobody on your team scores more than 16, and no major injuries that maybe there are, but not registering in my brain right now. Like you've got Butler, Adebayo, Lowry, Hero, Martin. I mean, I'm sure there's some injuries, and I'm just galaxy braining on, but yeah, and I've already talked about it, but I think you really, I mean, big day for Grady Dick stockholders. Because yeah, again, I was kind of baffled, especially when the Raptors were cratering in the third there. I think that's still something Darko has to kind of get used to. He's getting better with it. Obviously, at the start of the year, it was really, really rough. Like, really, it felt like every game I was coming on here talking about Darko's like prepackaged TV dinners. But he is getting better at it overall. But I do think that's something he still has to work on a little bit. Like when people are have the heat going, no pun intended. I think you can ride them a little bit harder. And he's kind of casual, or not. He's a bit too like protecting players from fouling out. Like he takes Porter out. Porter ended up only with 3 fouls in this game, but it felt like they took him out to kind of protect him from foul trouble. But how many Raptors players like fouling out of a game is not that common. I think coaches in general get a little bit too, he has 2 fouls in the first, we can't play him anymore. Especially on a night where I really did think Thad, like on defense, it's just the size, like Bam's size. It's gonna be a tough matchup for a lot of players. Another good defensive game from Scottie. He had some possessions on Butler, some possessions on Bam, and neither of them, again, nobody scored more than 16 points. So absolutely nobody from the Heat caught any kind of heat in this game. So I thought in general the Raptors defense was good. Third quarter was pretty rough. First half it was like incredible. Picked up again in the fourth, but that third quarter was, I don't know, that was just bizarre. I mean, after getting 78 in the first half, 16 in the third quarter, you don't really see a team fall off like that too often. And it's scary because, this is a Miami Heat team, obviously, that if there's any team that just doesn't care about, overcoming some big like deficit like that or some adversity, it's going to be the Heat culture, the purveyors of Heat culture are going to come through and make it competitive, which they did. And I don't know, were you guys worried there in the third? There was like probably 2 minutes, maybe even more than that, 2 to 3 minutes there in the third. I'm seeing some people in the chat mentioning Kira Lewis Jr. I just glanced at it really quickly. So we'll talk about the trade a little bit more in a sec after I finish up with the notes here. People who don't know, there's somewhat of a big trade today. I did an instant reaction video earlier today, but I spent the afternoon looking at some numbers and stuff. So maybe talk about that in a sec. Nothing too big brain, but yeah, I mean, once again, maybe the Eric Spoelstra thing is a Raptor Moments video. I mean, who knows? Sometimes these things just kind of happen. But yeah, it was my favorite. What was a dolphin or something behind me here? I'm in the Dalmatian Islands. I think it's in Croatia or something. Maybe someone tell me where I am. Jimmy Pope says, I think Scottie has excellent chemistry with Gary. He's always finding him for great looks. I agree. I've always thought that they were not perfect, but like a really good match, for a bunch of reasons, because Gary and Pascal also had low key good chemistry. I don't know if too many people picked up on that, but I definitely noticed it. And because the thing with Pascal and Gary and I'll talk about the trade later, but the thing with Pascal and Gary that worked really well was Pascal's mid-range ability and Gary's three-point ability. So they would pass it to each other, and defenses would have to scramble because both of them are like super threatening from where they are. And that's the nice thing about Gary is like teams lag a little bit on scouting reports, which is kind of strange, but I think they're looking at maybe a bigger holistic view. So like, I think for Gary, he would have to just have like an entire season of like 28% 3-point shooting for teams to be like, oh, we don't need to worry about that guy. So even when Gary's not hitting shots, he's creating a lot of space. He's creating a lot of gravity. Back earlier in the year when he wasn't in the starting lineup of the Raptors 10 most, of the top 10 Raptors most productive lineups, he was in like 8 of them and like 6 of the top 8. And a bunch of them just like weren't, in my opinion, getting enough looks, enough minutes. He wasn't having enough playing time with Scottie, in my opinion. And there'd be a lot of games where their chemistry would really show, but only in the fourth quarter. And now, I mean, of late, you're seeing them play together more. And like in transition, for example, what you really like about Gary in transit, what you hate about Gary in transition are the drives, but what you love about Gary in transition is how he's always set up for three. Like, if you've got the ball and you're dribbling up the floor, you're at the free throw line, the half line, the logo, you pretty much know Gary's going to be on that left elbow three. He loves that spot, or in one of the corners. Like, you kind of know he's going to be there, and those are great angles to make those longer passes to. And he's just like, he's locked in, he's shot ready, his hips are lined up, really quick release. And Scottie is kind of the perfect match with that, because he's going to get the ball up quickly, he's going to find you. And so, yeah, I think they definitely need to play together more. And I think they have potential to get even more chemistry together now that they have more guards around them as well that can also play make. And I think they can do even more, to be honest, especially tapping into that thing that Pascal and Gary had, where, Pascal is kind of in the elbow area. I think in certain looks and certain lineups, you could have Gary roaming around three a little bit more and Scottie on the elbow a little bit more, and create that kind of panic and scramble the defense. And then if you've got, Quickly or Schroeder on the floor, probably more so Quickly, that adds another playmaking. There's just so much more playmaking on this team as well now. So in my opinion, that makes Gary even more valuable, because you've got all this playmaking, and if you've got a guy who, has the gravity to space the floor, it's a really good combination, especially when he's hitting the shots. But even when he's not, not ironically, but that's just kind of how teams scout and how the league works. So if he's out in the 3-point line, you got to drag your man out there, and you're someone like Quickly. Now all of a sudden you've got more room to drive. Scottie's got more room to drive. There's more space, because it's kind of like in soccer. There's like the extreme example where if you're, a striker and you can really drag players out wide, and then you just open up the middle of the floor. And Gary, kind of plays like that in transition as well, where if Gary's running in transition, like you can't lose him. So if he's going to the corner, your guy kind of has to follow him to the corner, and now you might have a much more open lane for Scottie or quickly whatever to get through. Whereas if it's, no disrespect, maybe someone like Dennis, someone like Precious, it's like you can probably sag a little bit more and hedge and be a little bit more willing to maybe have like 1 foot in the paint, 1 foot out of the paint. Whereas, yeah, if Gary's running that same, lane, then, and the Heat, again, like the Heat did a really poor job on Gary tonight. I thought like a bunch of his looks were like pretty open, off screens, off ball movement. And it drove Spoelstra kind of insane, which was a really good subplot, side story. Very entertaining coach to watch. I mean, obviously, like for his tactics is really captivating, but I just think him in general, like I think he's really authentic. Like I think he just gets pissed and puts it out there. I like how he deals with like dumb questions at press conferences. Like I think there's an authenticity to him that's just kind of fun to watch. Obviously he got into it a couple years ago with Butler very publicly on the sideline there. That was kind of a pretty incredible moment. But yeah, he's one of my top few coaches in the league where I will put extra attention on kind of watching his like reactions and just like his aura in general. I do really get a kick out of coaches that are, kind of like that. Nick obviously is also top three. Darko has his moments. He had the water bottle moment, obviously the post-game presser moment. I am working on an RJ Barrett, Anthony Davis video where I actually defend Anthony Davis for not flopping because I found his quote unquote intense workout video. So, yeah. These quote unquote intense workouts were seemed pretty taxing. So I would imagine a 220 pound RJ Barrett would be a lot more to handle. So maybe I don't really blame him for that. And shouts to Ben Taylor. He didn't take over this game. I didn't think. You're gonna have a few bad calls in every game, but I didn't at all notice Ben Taylor calling like 77 fouls every possession up and down the floor. So that was good. I guess the Heat aren't of the Lakers cachet or caliber for some reason, but I was kind of waiting for it in the half. I was like, what's Ben Taylor gonna get? What's Ben Taylor gonna cook in the halftime? Steve B was a little nervous in the third until RJ went to work in the paint, and then Scottie in the fourth. Ended with Gary, put me at ease, salami and cheese in the end for three. Something about salami and cheese. I like that though. I definitely thought that those 3 drives in a row that RJ got free throws on, he missed a few of them for sure, but they really slowed the game down. And he did, hit a couple of the free throws, and it just was kind of a record scratch in a good way, like in the momentum that Miami was having, because obviously, just kind of like Darko taking Grady out of the game for such a long period of time. Even those like small plays where you can just stop the game 3 times in a row, give yourself a. How long did players take to do free throws? I fast forward all the free throws, so I record the game. And then I start the game like 25 minutes later. And I look at I'm like, okay, like this is how I watch the game. I'm like, okay, the Raptors have 42 points. And then I fast forward the free throws. And then at the end, I go, oh, they have 44 points now. So they made 2 free throws. Or, oh, they have 43 points. They made 1 free throw. That's unless it's like the end of the game, fourth quarter. But yeah, I don't watch free throws. So yeah, it warped my sense of time. But in real time, that's 45, maybe a minute, maybe 10 minutes if it's Giannis. You really do slow the game down in that way. And it was like a high IQ thing, I thought, from RJ, because it was really obvious that the Raptors offense just wasn't working. Like there wasn't enough ball movement. There wasn't enough cutting. They scored 16 points in the quarter, which is kind of, wild, especially after going 78 in the first half. And it just felt like he just kind of, it was like the right thing to do in that moment. You don't want to necessarily play that way all the time, 24/7, just, taking it by yourself and driving into three people. But it really like worked in that context. Like that was the perfect kind of safety net that they needed to just kind of slow things down, calm things down, get a few points. And then, the combination of that, Gary just dagger after dagger, like Legolas at Helm's Deep, just launching shit. I think we said that Gary was Legolas. I think we came to that conclusion. But yeah, it's just devastating 3-pointers. And then Scottie with, I don't even know what those were. A couple of them, like push. I'll be interested to see what the NBA advanced stats website how they categorize it, because definitely on one of them his guide hand like slid off and it felt like a Kem Birch Dirk kind of combo. So I don't really know what that was, but hey, it not only went in, but it was like just perfect arc, perfect swish. And not to shit on Pascal, but that is something that you always were left wanting with Pascal, was that touch, especially on like shots like that. His shots were just he had more of a line drive type shot, except when he shot threes, he did the like 10 pull thing. But on a lot of those kind of in between shots, off balance, didn't quite have that like I'm falling away, I'm on one foot, Bam's on top of me, and I'm gonna do basically a push shot with no guide hand. Is that a good segue to talk about the Siakam trade? Maybe I'll read some. Apparently, Jimmy Pope says apparently the first play that we ran was a play Darko learned from the coach that just passed away. Very touching. Gary drained that shot too. I didn't know that, but that's a nice moment. I also saw Spoelstra talking with Darko after the game. You could probably tell they were talking about what happened. Vegan Grass says Darko really upset post game. RIP losing his friend. Yeah, I think they knew each other since they were like Darko knew him as like a teenager. That's also a crazy thing to see happen. Like I think it was at a team dinner, like at the table. I mean, that's just a brutal thing to like be in the same room as, like to see that. That's something that probably sticks with you for a long time. So it's rough, man. Iconic says, I think we will move Bruce with the trade, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. Good evening. Yeah, so talk about the trade a little bit. I almost did something really stupid. Okay, well, I went live earlier today. I was listening to Matt Devlin on the Raptors show, and it just kind of went like, all right, I gotta put something out there, I guess, even though I don't really like doing that content. But I was looking at Basketball Reference, and I guess I just didn't realize that I was looking at per 100 possessions, and I was like, oh wow, Jordan Nwora averaged I guess it's just Wara. This is the end silent. Wara. I'm gonna have to learn that. Shouts to Alvin. Having to learn Van Vliet and Siakam. I'm gonna have to learn Nwora. Wara didn't have a nickname on Basketball Reference, which I thought was kind of puzzling. I thought every player at least has one, but I almost put out that I didn't realize I was looking at the per 100 possessions, and I was like, oh wow, he shot 45% from three on 10.6 attempts. I was like, well, good thing I didn't put that out, because I was like, that can't be right. And then I looked, and that was the per 100 possessions. I think actually it was something like one something possessions, or one attempt. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, he's never shot the three ball at like a high volume, but there are some numbers in there that kind of make you hopeful that it could come. I mean, nothing like blows you away, jumps off the page. Bruce Brown, also a career 33% 3-point shooter. Again, that doesn't really jump off the page at you. I did talk about the trade earlier in a quote unquote instant reaction video on this channel. It's like 26 minutes long. Yeah, I guess for me, like it is difficult as a civilian to talk about trades because like you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I guess I know more than a civilian, even though I'm still a civilian. That's a whole other topic. How do you deal with like knowing information? Not that I really know much, but I guess I know more than like a dog or something, or like a cat. Um, but I guess I was just confused as to the timing of it. Mostly, I think. Like I think that this deal is probably going to be there at the deadline. And you just never know what could happen between now and the deadline. You know, there could be a major injury to a contending team. You know, maybe Tobias Harris, maybe he's doing household chores or something. I guess he's a star. I don't know, but an important piece on like a contender team. Maybe he's doing chores like OG Anunoby and his knee explodes or something, or Derrick Rose injuring his hand, enjoying a sliced apple. You know, one of something like just crazy shit like that can happen where teams get way more desperate. And from an organization that has been so criticized for delaying and waiting, it just kind of seems the timing of it was kind of strange in that you've delayed all this time, you've waited all this time. What's 3 more weeks to see what else can happen? And again, it's hard as a civilian talking about this stuff because like who knows what's really happening behind the scenes. Only a couple people, and they're not gonna go on a podcast and actually say this stuff. Bobby Masai and does Michael Grange know stuff? I don't know. Maybe. He seems to put stuff out right after a player moves or something. Anyways, I don't have any Grange sources. I don't have any Grange connects. Haven't shot the breeze with Michael Grange yet. Don't think he's a fan of me. Randy Urban's not a fan. It's I think I've talked about this before. I've noticed there's a certain demographic of people that don't like me, and they're the people that look like me. So interesting stuff behind the scenes happening. But I just thought it was a weird, like timing on it. And obviously, if he had been under contract for longer, the package would be different. I mean, blah blah blah. The trades the draft picks are going to be in the 20s. I heard some people say, well, they got OG and Pascal in the 20s. I mean, the counter to that is Malachi. Shouts to Malachi. He was in the 20s. It's someone made the point that the Jakob pick was more valuable than any of the pick they traded away was more valuable than any of the Siakam picks. And if you're Indiana, and then of course, all the posturing is just nauseating from both sides. Just, very Saul Goodman, just Pascal Siakam won't play for your basketball team, and Kobe Buffkin and Jonathan Kuminga are untouchable. Like you just hear all this posturing, negotiation. So I'm glad that's all over, at least for the time being. But I saw that there was some report that the Houston Rockets were looking at Bruce Brown, and that was kind of my whole thing. Is like, I guess the only thing that really makes sense is that the Raptors have some, trade lined up for Bruce Brown that they wanted to beat. I guess whatever team just trading with Indiana by themselves. Like that was my only way not the only way, but that's kind of the way I made sense of it. Is maybe they know that a contender. I'm just throwing this out there. I was just looking at the standings and was like, who would want Bruce Brown? And to me, it was Dallas. I mean, they were a rumored team for Siakam. I mean, at the 4 slot, they've got like Kleba, Dennis Schroeder's best friend. uh, who the fuck else is at the 4? Like it's they're pretty underwhelming at the 4. Grant Williams, I guess, is he a 4? But he's barely getting minutes. I think Derrick Jones Jr. is starting for them at 4. And he's been good, but I mean, I think for them, a Bruce Brown player would be really nice for them. So that was like one team that I kind of thought about. But again, who do the Raptors really want in that deal? Like they're not getting. There was nobody really that they wanted that much for Siakam, and they're not going to put Lively in that deal. I doubt so. Obviously, they're not putting Lively in a Bruce Brown deal. I meant the Siakam deal. But yeah, the rumor was that Houston was interested. And normally I would be like, that's crazy. That sounds crazy. They're like 19 and 20, I think. But this is a team that gave Fred 40 mil, Dylan Brooks 40 mil, wanted to give Lopez, not Robin Lopez, Brooke Lopez. I always get them mixed up. I miss Robin Lopez's little hook shots, you know. But they tried to give him, what was that, like 30 million or 40, like some just crazy number. In not, I guess not crazy objectively, but in relation to the rest of the money that they've doled out. So I think they just want to make the playoffs, I think, and they're the 11th seed right now. The Jazz are kind of leaving that crew, but they're kind of in that malaise with the Lakers, the Warriors. So I guess if you add Bruce Brown to that, I guess you get into the play-in, I guess. But it also was like, who do they give up? Like, you're not giving up Jalen Green for Bruce. I wouldn't think. That would be kind of insane, I think. Obviously, you're not getting Şengün. You're not getting... I was just kind of going down the list. You're not getting Jabari. I mean, they just drafted Amin Thompson with the 4th pick. You're not going to trade away the guy you just drafted 4th. I don't know. Tari Eason or something. So it's just... That was kind of a weird one to me as well. But yeah, I think, you know, Bruce Brown, he can like, if you're not trading him, if he is going to be a fit, obviously he's a great cutter, great finisher, shoots 70% at the rim, 3-point shot, not really there. Really, I think he has like he's one of those guys with like, he has the Donovan Mitchell wingspan, where Donovan Mitchell's like 5'8", but with like a 7'9" wingspan. He's actually like 6'1" with a 6'11" or 6'10" wingspan, but he kind of seems like he has that kind of build. So, you know, the one thing that I do, potentially see as a fit, not only with the cutting and the finishing, obviously, great in transition. I thought he was decent in like in a half court role too when he was with the Nets. Like, obviously with the Nuggets, he was in a very specialized role, coming off the bench, playing with like Jeff Green, Christian Brown, and like Thomas Bryant, I think, David Thorpe's favorite guy, who played in this game, by the way. But yeah, you saw him in a much more specialized role in Denver, where like he's probably not going to like cook that much. But in Brooklyn, he was on the kind of Claxton and Dinwiddie, I think, was there too. Was he there with the KD, Steve Nash, friend of the show, Steve Nash, and the Kyrie Sega? I think he had a cup of coffee with them too. But he was kind of a fun player in that role, kind of like a weird point guard center guy. So yeah, if he is going to be with the Raptors, I mean, I don't know how they would use him. If it would be a mix between the two, I don't know if he's starting. I don't know. I don't think he would, but maybe. But I think it would probably be somewhere in between. Like, it's probably not going to be, go cook like crazy on Brooklyn, but then it's also not going to be like, hey, you're an Otto Porter Jr. on this team. Like, the Raptors aren't really deep enough to warrant that. That's if they are keeping him. If they're not, then again, the only thing that really makes sense to me is there's some really thirsty contender out there who wants Bruce Brown, and the Raptors wanted to beat them in a trade, and then they can trade Bruce Brown to them, because again, this is a front office that, like, other front offices are very publicly, like, not as publicly as you possibly can be as a front office. Like, other front offices are just not in general very like, it's very well known that the Raptors will drag things out, maybe have like info dump type or brain dump type, like phone calls where it's really just trying to get a read on the other person, and obviously word spreads about that pretty quickly in those circles. So yeah, it just seemed kind of but I mean, both of these trades were out of character. You had obviously the early OG trade, the early Siakam trade, and I think along with the timing on the Bruce Brown thing, it does also give them more time before the deadline to make more trades. So I know Cape Ness was flabbergasted. I don't know if people remember this. Back when I was a pregame show enjoyer, flabbergasted at the notion of further trades after the OG trade. Sam Mitchell brought it up, and she was like the time I did salvia at Wreck Beach, where I held the bong hidden for like 20 seconds too long and exhaled, and it just basically immediately, like, salvia hits you really fucking quick, immediately just like fell back into a log where I was kind of standing, kind of sitting, but just my back against this log looking to the ocean, where dragons and monsters are coming out of the ocean and like into me at a pretty rapid pace. They're vicious. I'm there with a friend that I've known for like 12 years, played baseball with him, watched like every Vancouver Canucks 2011 Stanley Cup playoff game with him, went downtown to games with him, went to his house. We used to play guitar together. We used to watch Seinfeld, Curb, Arrested Development, smoked a ton of weed with the guy, hung out with him at lunchtime at school. He's with me, and there was like a random like Chinese tourist family taking pictures, which you're not supposed to do. It's a nude beach. But like, I didn't know who I knew somebody at the beach, but I didn't know if it was like this really like innocent Chinese family, like tourist family at the beach, at Wreck Beach in Vancouver, taking pictures, or this guy I've known for like 15 years. I knew that I knew one of them, but I didn't know which one. And I was like dying to ask like what was happening. Why are there monsters and dragons coming out of the ocean at me? And I was just like paralyzed. And I just ended up saying nothing and leaning against this log for what felt like an eternity, but I think it was probably 5-10 minutes. And again, that's what Kate was like at the idea of trades beyond the OG Anunoby trade. So that's my visualization. I think I did go talk to the family afterwards, because I think they were there for like a while, and then I think after we just smoked a bunch of weed and were probably more social, doing a lot of stuff back then. I guess it's a popular tourist spot. Drug says, sounds like a bad time. Yeah, it was pretty horrible. It's funny because like typically you smoke it out of a bong. I think it's legal too, I think it was legal while weed was illegal. But yeah, the like, I remember we went in like into the forest a little bit. I don't know why. It's like Wreck Beach. And I took this like really small hit. Like I think I only held it in. Like I took a small hit, and then I held it in for like 15 seconds or something, and then exhaled it. And my friend Cam's like, "Oh, you're probably not gonna feel much, whatever." And then he got pretty like into it. Like he was pretty out of it, but still like functional. And then we got back to the beach, and we're just kind of sitting there. And I was like, you know what? Let me try that again. We don't have to go into the forest. I'm just gonna do it at the log here. And then I didn't move from the log. in anybody else in salvia. I don't think I would do it again. It's funny because like I haven't heard a lot of people have good experiences on it. Like something like DMT, you hear kind of a mixture. Ayahuasca, you hear a mixture. You know, some people life-changing experience. They love it. A couple of people will say like it maybe drove them crazy or something, or they had a bad experience. But with salvia, I feel like it's like 85% of people that I talked to didn't enjoy it. It hits you so fucking quickly. That's the nice thing about shrooms is like you get that ramp up period. I used to always fuck up the ramp up period because I would be the guy who would take like 3.5 grams with like a few people, and then like 40 minutes in, it's like I don't really feel anything, and other people are like, oh, I'm starting to notice the grass is greener than I thought before, and I'm just like, it's not really hitting yet. I need to do like 2 extra grams, so then I'm kicking it at like 5.5 when other people are on 3.5. That happened to me a few too many times. I got some good shroom stories, Jimmy Pope says, I have, but I'd never do it again. That's like what everybody says. I haven't really met a lot of people who have done salvia like 20 times. It's like, yeah, I tried that once. And because that was one that was like that was one of the first YouTube genres for the old school like YouTube. I honestly, the video I think about making more than any other video ever, and I don't think there'd be like 4 people that would watch it like on this channel, is just all my influences in like a 20-hour, more of an off-season type of thing. I thought about doing that for Christmas. I'd get like 30 people would unsubscribe, and then like 5 people would watch the whole thing, but we'd be bonded for life. But one of the early, like I was into YouTube basically day one. Like it came out 2005. I was in grade 9. Every computer lab was on YouTube. It was like the YouTube genres back then were like dancing videos, which I guess is kind of like TikTok now, but like dancing videos. News bloopers were massive because I don't even know how they got onto YouTube, but you just never saw like news bloopers in 2005 until YouTube came along. So like news blooper compilations were huge, and then salvia videos were huge. Like doing X on salvia was like an entire YouTube genre, and the unforgivable videos, of course. But salvia really was like its own YouTube genre. And I think I don't think I was really influenced by those, but though they were always really crazy. Vegan Grass says Coloco was just waived. Waived? What? The fuck? Are you serious? Because doesn't that mean that he's waived? What? Breaking news on the Raptor Moments post-game show. Did anybody have Vegan Grass? By the way, you've brought some really good stuff to the post-game show. Like you're kind of on the news. I like that. I'm wrapped up in my notes, and you Shams Strani, the Raptors have waived center Christian Coloco to complete the Pascal Siakam trade. What? The Raptors have waived center Christian Coloco to compete. Okay. Brown down to 6th season. Kayla Gray put out a press release, but I don't see Coloco in this. What the fuck does it have to do? Keith Smith, Toronto somewhat unsurprisingly waived Christian Coloco to free up the roster spot to complete the trade. What? The roster. Garrett Temple has a roster spot. McDaniels? Wow. So he's just gone? Like, wow. Does anybody remember when he got scammed by that sexy lawyer? That story didn't get talked about enough, but it was in like Colorado. He was in Aspen, I think. In Colorado. We're going to Aspen. Um, my favorite Christian. Well, you know, Christian talk. Wow, Christian Coloco. I mean, speaking of the Miami Heat, wow, I'm still processing this. The first ever Willu contact that I ever had was a message saying Christian Coloco watched your video. I remember it was on a Sunday. It was raining and I was very depressed, and that made me happy. Because that was always the goal, is like, can you get these players to watch this stuff at like 3 a.m. in an Uber when they're like on MDMA or something? They're like, hey, look at this stupid video. That was always the dream. So that was a really cool moment. But I'm making it about me, so I'll shut up on that. But yeah, he got scammed by this sexy lawyer in Colorado. She also scammed like 4 other professional athletes. It was some money contract scam or whatever. But yeah, so I don't know what. Obviously, his condition has been kept under wraps. People have suspected it's long COVID. I have long COVID symptoms too. Again, not to make it about me, but yeah, it sucks. It affects me when I'm not exercising, which is really weird. Like when I exercise, I actually feel better, and then when I don't, I feel like shit. But yeah, and I don't know if that's the thing, but that's what people kind of speculated on. But yeah, that doesn't make much sense to me unless he's like completely like unserviceable. I don't really even know. That's like really weird news. He must be seriously ill, Coloco. Wow. I mean, am I trying to find silver linings because that's some childhood trauma, whatever? I had to be the fixer or whatever. But hair's looking great today. Wow. I mean, he's been at all the games. Like, he's been cheering. He's been standing up. He's been on the bench. I mean, it's hard to judge from that, but it just kind of makes it really surprising if he had been completely, out of the, just not even in the building or whatever. But the fact that he's been there every game, we see him on camera cheering and clapping and stuff. Yeah, that's kind of wild. The Starboy said, or the Shy Starboy, I'm seeing other reporters say it seems he'd come back in the summer, play on the 905. Yeah, I wish I knew more about the whole like waving and how that works. Nameless says Coloco's never playing again. Wow. I didn't know that. Wow. Is that just vibes, or it's kind of a wild thing to throw out there? Vegan Grass says Blake said Coloco will continue his training with the 905 if the Raptors choose to do that. Wow. Yeah, that's kind of wild. I guess they kind of weighed the situations, I guess, with like McDaniels and Temple and stuff. But could another team just come in and grab him though? Like just some random, like Charlotte or something, and like, yeah, we'll grab him and then we'll wait it out. That's like, how is it guaranteed that he's gonna be with the 905? Wow. Well, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, I guess that does kind of dovetail into the trade, because it seemingly is to open up a roster spot for the trade. I guess that's going to be one of Kira Lewis Jr., who, when I looked at his basketball reference, he seems to play like 20 games a season. So I'm guessing there's some injury history there. And then Jordan Nwora or Wara, who just hasn't gotten like serious playing time in he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years, and hasn't really gotten like a serious look. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, anyways, go watch I guess if you want more banter on the trade, I did put out a thing earlier today, just like my first initial reaction. Yeah, so just to recap, we had a big dick game. Really thought Darko should have kept him in more. Wanted to see more dick. 2 really nice splash threes. Couple really nice assists. One of them was like a spin move into an assist. Just seemed to like make every right play. I thought Porter had a good game. He got cooked a little bit by Bam, which is going to happen. Darko got a little conservative, in my opinion, trying to protect him from foul trouble. He ended up with only 3 fouls in this game, and I thought he definitely could have played more minutes. That was one of my gripes in the third quarter. He only played 18 minutes. Thad played 28, so that seems inverted a little bit, in my opinion. I thought Darko really kind of slipped in the third quarter, and the team did as well. But yeah, it was the Heat just could never get back from that first half. I mean, if the Raptors would have lost this up 78-43, it would have been that probably would have been the worst loss of the year, I think. Yeah, the Jazz loss, which was bad. The Blazers loss, which was really bad. There's been some bad losses, and that would have been historic. But it was luckily enough of a cushion for them. And yeah, the Raptors had really crazy ball movement in the first half. There was a lot of clips going around of just like 12 passes basically. I thought Porter and Dick look a lot more confident, and Dick and Boucher go into the first half plus 42 in 7 minutes, kind of wild. And then in the third quarter, it just kind of fell off the rails. Darko calls the first timeout. The defense was really slipping. Darko calls the second timeout. There's no Jonte, there's no Dick, there's no Boucher during an 18-4 Heat run. And I thought that those 3 guys were like super effective in the first half, and it was kind of going off the rails. And then Barrett, 3 drives in a row, gets free throws, just changed the momentum, the flow of the game. Raptors only scored 16 points in the third quarter after putting up a 78 burger in the first half. And then it's Gary just hitting dagger after dagger after dagger, just destroying Eric Spoelstra's mental health during this game. And then Scottie just hitting ridiculous mid-range shots that also contributed to Eric Spoelstra's not super happy mood for this game. Again, Eric Spoelstra, one of my favorite coaches to watch. Very animated, very authentic. Doesn't really give a fuck. Just kind of puts it out there. Yeah, the Raptors win 97-121. Couple more games. You got the pizza party coming up potentially. I guess, will Bruce Brown and those guys be in tomorrow? Does anybody know when they're? Because who do the Raptors play tomorrow? Oh, I also put out a Precious Achiuwa highlight clip package today. Nick highlights set to Nas New York State of Mind, if anybody's interested in that. Got the 80 RJ Barrett video coming up. Gonna put a Pascal Siakam Supercut video. I'm gonna put that out tomorrow. Raptors play the Bulls tomorrow, so I wonder if the new guys will be at that game. Vegan Grass says Grange said there's a good chance he stays with the organization. Mazar says Bulls tomorrow is on TNT. Why is that on TNT? Oh man, are you for real? Thursday, Bulls Raptors TNT. I guess play-in rematch. Is that the cell, I guess? Um, the TNT famously cut off the Bulls or the Bucks Celtics game like last week because it was so out of hand at the half, and I wonder if the Raptors are up 78-43 on the Bulls if they do the same thing, or vice versa. Um, Kobe White has shot with a bullet to number one odds for most improved ahead of Maxey and Scottie. And yeah, he's been like wild this year. Like I think he's shooting like 11 threes a game or something and hitting like 7 or 8 of them. He's just been crazy jump. Also, I can't get this stat out of my head. It was on the Athletic NBA show. They were just throwing out like stats that surprised them. And Tyrese Maxey was the least efficient volume pull-up three-point shooter in the NBA. It's like 31% or something on pull-up threes. And then Scottie was like the second least efficient in transition for points per possession. It was like 0.9 or something. I mean, he gets a lot of assists, but yeah, those were two stats that like I keep thinking about and like doesn't really make sense in my brain. But yeah, Kobe White, he's just kind of a really crazy leap. I mean, I think he was coming off the bench last year. Like he wasn't even like a guy for them. He was just filler basically. And now just looks like electric. I mean, really took over the team when Levine went out. And Raptors, Bulls. I mean, that's another, talking about losses early on. That was the Raptors. Was that the third game of the year against the Bulls that they lost? That was a devastating one with some really sus calls at the end of that too. I think that was the Pascal offensive foul on Caruso. That was pretty rough. Also, shouts to Michael Pina of The Ringer for writing 8 players taking a big jump this year. And Patrick Williams was one of them, but Scottie wasn't. So I thought that was an interesting article. He also wrote an article asking if Devin Booker was the best point guard in the NBA, above Luka and Steph and stuff. So, good stuff. I got to cover the whole league one day. Hey, is Haywood Highsmith the second coming or something? I don't know. So yeah, Raptors win. Think that's pretty much it. Hour 12, cracking that hour mark pretty consistently. I think I had one that was like 45 minutes on the late game, but cracking that hour mark pretty consistently these days. So that's all I care about. It's just for aesthetics, getting those digits up there. So yeah, tune in tomorrow,